So this month I had decided to go to Moab to find the world's greatest flint knapper who lived there. Then I found out he'd fled Moab and gone to Arizona. So I decided to get in my car and follow him to Arizona to a gathering called Winter Count. Check out the gold mine of stories I found there.
That 99.9% of all of us came from a Stone Age heritage, or that heritage was 99% of our development, and so we have an affinity for it. We have an attraction for it automatically, just because it's part of us genetically, I think. And when people come across it, that they'll look at skills and they'll look at the way people do things, if it's pottery or flint knapping or whatever, and they'll have a natural affinity to those crafts.
That's really cool. And then is this like wool?
Yeah, this is actually hand woven by Métis out of Canada. It's traditional, mountain men type sash. I wanted something that was handmade.
Yeah, that's great. And you did this all yourself?
Oh yeah, all of it. I skinned all the animals.
Yeah. Yeah, we do a series of stories about how people escape the corporate world and sitting in front of computers or behind dashboards.
I made my escape. It wasn't the corporate world, but I made the escape.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
Thank you. 7 was my first, was rabbit stick. Was my first gathering.
You kind of got hooked after that?
Oh my God. By the second day, I was like a kid in a candy shop. I was just walking around like, and by the second day, I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep coming back to I'm going to do Winter Count, I'm going to do rabbit stick, I'm going to do them every year. I haven't missed one since.
Wow. It definitely seems to take a certain kind of personality type this resonates with.
The misfits, the kind of, not all of us, but a lot of, the people who feel like we don't exactly belong in this world, in that fakeness.
Yeah.
That's me anyway.
And do you sell all your stuff usually at these places, these gatherings, or you go to other markets, or?
This is my main market. It's the gatherings. I don't have other markets, but I do have people somehow hear about me, and I get emails or phone calls, and I want to hide, and it's usually, do you have any brain tan? I want to hide, or two, and I'm like, well, what do you need it for? What are you making? What do you need? Do you need a big hide, a small hide, a thick hide, a thin hide? I'm like, I don't know. Well, what are you making out of it? And you go from there. And just...
You don't have a website or anything like that?
No, maybe one of these days, but I don't feel the need.
Yeah.
It's a hassle.
So this is kind of a self-enclosed economy.
Kinda, yeah.
You buy stuff from other people and they buy your stuff. And...
Yeah. In a way, a little bit. I mean, we still use cash.
Yeah.
When there's something I need that someone has that, and they need a hide, that I love that. That works great. I mean, I would easily trade a $250 hide for something that is maybe worth $125 if I need that thing. I'd be happy with that trade. Because
you should probably go on
clothing,
for a while.
Shirts, pants, shorts, leggings, moccasins, capes, jackets, hats, bags, backpacks, water drums, thank you, medicine pouches, little pouches, big pouches. What can't you make out of it?
All right.
So I have to find just the right wedge.
I take a couple shots here.
Oh yeah, go on ahead. That's fine, Charlie. Lifestyles, most flint nappers were dying probably by the time they were 45 years old. You know, so I've already napped longer than any of those guys from the prehistoric past. So I've lived a Paleolithic life for a while. Or see how that looks. Just like a corridors.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
That's cool.
That's great.
Very cool.
And you don't have to sharpen that.
No, this is ready to go. From one piece of rock,
Wow.
which is and so also with that bag in there, all those too. But these I'm going to keep them in good shape.
Is it really difficult to find good rock?
Yeah, and on some levels it is. I'll stop here. This is a nice blade. It is, and but with obsidian, when you dig it up from the ground, it's usually pretty nice. So preferably we mine obsidian. When you pick it up off the surface, it's more vulnerable to fractures.
Yeah. Do you think that this is something that should be taught in schools to kids? These basic survival things and flint napping and using your body and your mind to create things?
I think any craft should be taught in schools. I mean, it's just this idea that we've removed all funding from manual arts to computer science, just literally changed the way people think, kids think, the way they solve problems. It's changed everything. And so I teach at a university, and the statistics right now, even with university students, is that fewer than 15% of the university students have ever made anything with their hands. To me, that's deplorable. So to reverse that process and get people back in touch with themselves through connecting their hands and their heads and their hearts to produce something of substance, I think is important, because it literally does change people.
And I think that people want to try to wrap their head or define this movement. This isn't like the hippie movement. This is like the back to our ancestral roots. How would you define this in comparison to
You can just look at camp. It's not all young kids in buckskins. You've got families here. You've got people in motorhomes. So there's no way to really describe the demographic. It's across the board. So it hits people in just about every socioeconomic bracket or background or culture, whatever. It's attractive to everybody. So.
Would you like to see this gathering grow, or are you kind of happy with the size it's at? Or
size to me isn't a measure of success. Quality is. So, I think if you get too big, then you start losing quality. So I think the more small gatherings there are out there, local gatherings, I think is important. And the fact that those are growing right now, I think is critical. And then the fact that we do one that's always been kind of booked as the national event, which is Rapid Stick that we hold in the fall in Idaho. Use that as the place if you want to see people from a different region, go there. So, I think lots of smaller things is much better than any big thing. No big city has ever attracted me for any reason. I like little small towns.
Yeah. and you live in Rexburg, as you say?
Live in Teton, just outside of
Teton.
Rexburg.
Cool. Tell me your full name again.
David Westcott, Wescott.
And you teach at, where do you teach at?
I'm an adjunct faculty at BYU, Idaho.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but I do this stuff full time, or I consult, teach, do trainings, travel around, write.
Do you have like a blog or website?
Oh, yeah, we have a website, rapidstick.com is our website. Facebook. Yeah, we have a Facebook page, Backtracks LLC, or that's Backtracks Keeping Traditions Alive is the Facebook page.
And this knife and holder you have around your neck, did you make that entirely?
This is an Eastern style, so this would have been the traditional style that would have come out of the 1700s quill work that would have been used by frontiersmen who were meeting face to face with people who lived in those regions as they came across the country. So this idea of reenactments is another way that people are reconnecting with the skills, and that's been going on for a long time. People that are doing Revolutionary War reenactments or French and Indian War reenactments or Civil War reenactments, these people are using the skills and the crafts and the history to recreate those time periods. And so that's another area of recapturing the past. Right here, they're going back to a Stone Age tradition, which is everybody's shared heritage. So it's not like we are trying to copy any particular culture. It's part of everybody's history, and that's the great thing about it, is that it's not exclusive, it's inclusive.
Great.
What I can.
How did you learn basket making?
How did I start doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was living in North Carolina. Well, I'd been kind of interested in it for a while. And TJ, who's the other teacher for this class, Tracy, I became friends with her when I went out to Minnesota to harvest maple syrup with a bunch of kind of young woodsy people. And she was one of those people, and she had just gotten done interning with this person, Margaret Mathewson, who lives in Western Oregon. And I was like, oh, I'm interested in doing that. I would go and live with her. And so she said, well, I'll give you a recommendation then. And so she wrote her an email and said, hey, this person wants to study with you, and I think you'd like her. And so she did, and then I went out to study with her. But before that, I actually met another woman in North Carolina named Louise Langsner, who's a really, really special person. And she was weaving willow baskets, and I kind of ended up on her property serendipitously, and she was doing a workshop, and so I asked if I could sit in. And so she let me, and then we got to talking, and she had actually also studied with Margaret Mathewson, who ended up being my teacher. But I did a couple of classes with Louise in North Carolina before I moved out to Oregon. So that's the story. And then I lived with my teacher Margaret for about a year at her place, and then kind of came back over the next few years on and off.
And this is your full-time profession?
Not really. It's part, I do make money teaching in other contexts and try to, sell baskets when I'm here and there. And so it's part of my shtick.
Yeah.
The problem is that some people have separated themselves so far from the making of things that a lot of people probably won't ever get back in touch with it. But there's so many people out there who just the very act of making something from scratch, making something from natural materials, goes back and touches that part of them that has always kind of been unsatisfied. I'll go back and rediscover that part. So I think that's part of it. The other part of it, I think, is just it's the exposure that we've gotten in the media the last few years with survival TV and that sort of thing. I think people now finally realize that there's a source out there for them to learn from. I mean, we've been doing this I started in 1970, but we've been running gatherings for 30 years. And they've just grown over the years. I think when we started ours, we were the only one doing it. I think there's 30 of them nationwide now that have copied our model. And then there's one in Israel, so they're spreading worldwide now. And so the idea that people can access the information, I think, is important. And so the fact that it's available and they know it's available has probably helped a little bit with the growth.
For this face, and it was too wide. Okay, so that's why we got to taper it.
We was a teacher in high school, actually, who told me something really funny. He said he worked in the Peace Corps in Borneo, and he said he thought there were two different kinds of cultural mindsets about productivity. One was not the Puritan mindset about productivity, and he said some of the people he met in Borneo, if you showed them a technology for them to grow palm oil trees on their plantations at like double efficiency, so you get twice as much oil out of the same acreage. He said they would plant half as much acreage and maintain their lifestyle and work half as much. And And if they're really ambitious, they might plant like 2/3 of what they've been planting and make a little more, you know. And so we just, instead of making our lives easier, we just increase the expectations we put on each other and on ourselves with our technology. So it does make life any easier, and it drains our resources that much faster.
Blocked off with an underhand loop, and that's my pack. Okay. I have that way usually. Here. I could take my empty water bottle and shove it in this, pull this out, put the empty water bottle right back in there. Okay? Which is always a nice thing to do because it's less weight on your back. In the old days, before I became smart, like 2 years ago.
Has it been that long?
Yeah. I used to take my pot, actually it's been about 3 or 4 years ago, because that's when I started using those pots in the field. I used to use the number 10 can with the wire and all that other stuff. And I used to strap that on the outside because it was all sooty and I didn't want everything in my world sooty. But then I got smart. I got a good pot and then I encase it and I stuff it full because it's just air otherwise, and we're good to go. So I used to tie that pot on the outside, and I do this kind of system, and here's my pot, it goes over here, blah, blah, blah. You can figure that one out however you want.
My takeaway is that you can use your brain and your hands and natural materials to make useful things. I think kids especially need to learn this so they get sucked out of this virtual world. Now, YouTube and the internet, all technology is great, but we need to stay connected with the idea that the real world, the tangible world, is what really matters. And if you want to support this kind of content, subscribe to Utah Stories magazine or subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Do you have anything for $5? Because this was $5.
I have some dinosaur bone.
Dinosaur bone? Okay.
This is dinosaur bone. You can see that was the middle of it.
Okay.
At least 3 hours, I think.
And then they're cooked and glazed when they're,
well, it's not hot enough to be really glazed.
I'm worried about all that dust.